Last week, we heard the story about that time that Jesus tried to get away but couldn't. Remember? Better known as the feeding of the 5,000. In today's story from Matthew's Gospel, all the people are healed, all the crowds are fed, and all the leftovers of their surprising feast are gathered up. And so at long last, Jesus sends the people away, sends them all away. He even puts his disciples in a boat and dismisses them. Finally, he gets his time to himself, his time to rest, and he goes up a mountain to pray. This was not the first time, and neither would it be the last time for Jesus to spend some time alone in retreat and prayer. If we are serious about following in the footsteps of this Jesus fellow, if we really want to be his disciples, patterning our lives on our Savior, teacher, and friend, I think that we need to consider very seriously Jesus's tendency to get away, his practice of rest and prayer. It seems we often forget that part, or maybe we ignore it. Because, like the command to love your neighbor as yourself, it can be deceptively difficult to follow. We are busy after all, so busy, always doing something, a whole pile of somethings even. Our lives are so often full to the brim. Who has the time or the space to rest, to get away and pray? Sometimes those things that fill up our lives are even good things, important things, life-giving things. However, whatever those tasks, duties, and activities we are carrying around, and sometimes it's more like juggling than anything else, those things will always begin to wear away at us. Jesus was a busy guy. He was doing important and, I'm sure, often life-giving work. Yet he still made time to rest. Jesus even demonstrated a flexibility around his practice. In last week's story, temporarily delaying his retreat for a time because he could see something special was happening. As the crowds sought him out, he felt the kingdom of heaven coming near. However, he did not put it off indefinitely. He ultimately took his rest, making an opportunity for himself to put down for a time the things he had been carrying or juggling. He took the time that he needed. It was he, after all, who came to the disciples when he was ready, striding upon the face of the water. Should we be surprised that Jesus evidently had a robust practice of rest, retreat, and prayer? I don't think so. As a faithful Jewish man, he took the Sabbath seriously, even though he had several disagreements with people about what was allowed on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is more than just a day. It is a way of approaching life. It is a rhythm of holy rest and prayer that is in our very beings. This rhythm of rest is so holy, so central to our faith, so fundamentally necessary for the flourishing of ourselves and for the entire world, that we tell a story of God doing the very, very good work of creation and then taking a time of rest. We are called to live our lives in this rhythm of creation. This rhythm we see in the life of Jesus, a pattern that includes rest and prayer, daily, weekly, monthly, baked in, woven into the fabric of our lives. Since I have been here for just over a year now, the last couple of weeks has included for me a time of reflection on the past and future. Part of this has been setting goals for the year. And one of my personal goals for this year is to go on at least one retreat that is at least 3 days long. Whether online or in person, I want to make this commitment to the practice of rest. I wonder, would you join me? What could your goal be to incorporate rest and prayer, play and recreation into your life each day, each week, each year? It can have transformative effects. After Jesus got away, after he had been up the mountain to pray, he came to the disciples walking on the stormy seas. And the story says that the disciples thought he was a ghost. Makes sense. It's unusual to see someone walking on water after all. But Mitzi J. Smith, a New Testament professor at Columbia Seminary, commenting on this passage, writes, "Perhaps Jesus looks like a ghost because the Jesus that the disciples left on the other side of the sea looked overworked, fatigued, drab, and unsteady. Perhaps they were not accustomed to seeing Jesus look so rested, in control, and peaceful." I like that. Rest can change us. Time to get away, play, and pray can recreate us as we recreate. Maybe Jesus was so rested and transformed that the disciples thought he was a ghost. Maybe Jesus was so rested and transformed that he could walk on water. Madeleine L'Engle is one of my favorite authors who wrote one of my favorite books, A Wrinkle in Time. She was a faithful Episcopalian, playing with art, science, and theology in her works of both fiction and nonfiction. A few weeks ago, on my first holiday ever, really, I had the great blessing of reading one of her books, coincidentally called Walking on Water, Reflections on Faith and Art. In it, she writes about Peter's steps upon the waters. As long as he didn't remember that we human beings have forgotten how to walk on water, he was able to do it. Let me say that again. As long as Peter didn't remember that we human beings have forgotten how to walk on water, he was able to do it. It is easy in the midst of the storm to get distracted by the wind and the waves. I think that when we practice rest, to play and pray, we remember how to walk on water. We might even be mistaken for ghosts. I wonder if that's partly what Jesus meant when he talked about children, to whom belong the kingdom of heaven, whom we should pay attention to and somehow try to emulate. Children can be so good at play and rest and taking what they need. They are often not so busy that they have forgotten how to walk on water. It can be so much work to rest. It can feel like we have too many balls in the air and we are not able to put them down. It can feel like we are drowning, and the possibility of rest that leads to walking on water seems wildly impossible or impracticable or overwhelming. If this is you, and I think that this can be all of us from time to time, listen to Jesus's words, because I believe they are for you. Take heart. Do not be afraid. Jesus pulls us up by the hand and quiets the storm. Jesus shows us by his example that the rhythm of rest, of Sabbath, the rhythm of creation is possible for us too. Jesus reminds us that the impossible can be possible. People can be healed. People can be fed and cared for. Water can be walked on. We can even put down the things we are carrying, take our rest, and be renewed and transformed. And when we doubt this, when we lose our faith, Jesus will not lose his faith in us. Thanks be to God.